The moment froze, suspended in the steam of the executive locker room. Michael Callahan stood paralyzed in the doorway, his hands still gripping the handle, as if it might anchor him against what he was seeing. Across the room, Danielle Harris clutched a towel that hadn't been there a second earlier, her eyes wide with shock, her body half turned away. Have you ever experienced a moment that wasn't your fault but changed the way people saw you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. For a heartbeat that stretched eternally, neither moved. Michael started, then stopped, his voice failing him. He was the CEO of Callahan Enterprises, a man who commanded boardrooms and closed nine-figure deals without blinking. Yet now, caught in this unplanned violation of boundaries, words abandoned him completely. Had you ever experienced a moment when everything changed in seconds? When someone saw more of you than you ever intended? The company's executive gym on the 27th floor should have been empty at 10:30 p.m. That's why Danielle had chosen it, a perk granted to junior accountants only after normal hours, when executives were home with their families or entertaining clients downtown, not standing in doorways, witnessing colleagues in states of undress. The men's room is the next door, Danielle finally said, her voice steadier than it had any right to be. Her chin lifted slightly, a gesture of dignity clawing back control. The proper response was to apologize immediately and leave, to close the door, retreat, and ensure this moment became nothing more than an awkward memory they would both professionally ignore. Instead, Michael remained frozen, processing three unexpected realizations at once. First, the new junior accountant from the South Side hired last month was stunningly beautiful without her usual conservative business attire. Second, security cameras documented all access to executive floors, including his current, inappropriate lingering. And third, absolutely nothing in his Harvard MBA had prepared him for this collision of professional boundaries and primal human awareness. "I'm sorry," he managed, his voice cracking like glass. But neither of them moved away, trapped in gravity they didn't understand. What happens in the split second when power dynamics, attraction, and career ambitions collide? What choice would you make? The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything too bright, too exposed. Danielle's resume flashed through his mind. Graduated top of her class at University of Illinois, fought her way up from nothing, earned recommendations that broke through a stack of Ivy League applications. All that ambition and potential now standing vulnerable before the one man who could sink her career with a word. "This never happened," Michael finally said, stepping backward. "I took the wrong door. That's all." But even as he closed the door, the damage was done. In a corporate world run on perceptions, this moment would ripple outward whether they wanted it to or not. By morning, security logs would show them both here. Questions would form. Assumptions would grow like weeds through concrete. "I'm sorry," he repeated through the door, not knowing if she could hear him, before walking swiftly toward the elevator, his heart hammering against his crisp white shirt. Inside the locker room, Danielle's carefully built composure crumbled. Her hands shook as she dressed quickly, professionally, armor against a world that had just tilted beneath her feet. 5 years of night school, 2 accounting certifications, countless rejections, and finally landing at Callahan Enterprises, only to have everything threatened by a wrong door and bad timing. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal of the locker, closing her eyes against tears of frustration. This job meant everything. The apartment she could finally afford, the student loan she was slowly conquering, the future that had always seemed just beyond reach. Now hung by a thread because Chicago's most eligible CEO had seen her nearly naked. By morning, 3 things had changed irreversibly. A security report noted their overlapping presence in the executive gym at an unusual hour. Michael Callahan canceled his 9 a.m. meeting without explanation for the first time in 5 years, and Danielle Harris applied her makeup with extra care, preparing for battle in a war she never asked to fight. The wrong door had opened, and now neither could close what lay between them. If one glance could destroy everything you built, would you run away or face what comes next? "Ms. Harris," came the receptionist's voice through her phone at precisely 10:17 a.m. Mr. Callahan would like to see you in his office immediately. The elevator ride to the top floor stretched eternally. With each ascending floor, Danielle rehearsed explanations, defenses, and resignations, preparing for every scenario except the one awaiting her behind his door. Danielle's knuckles barely grazed the frosted glass door when it swung open. Michael Callahan stood framed against floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago spread out behind him like his personal kingdom. His tailored suit, charcoal gray today, hung perfectly on his athletic frame. No hint remained of last night's flustered man in gym clothes. "Close the door, Miss Harris." She did, feeling the soft click like a jail cell locking. The executive floor hummed with quiet efficiency outside, associates and assistants moving with purpose, unaware of the tension stretching between CEO and junior accountant. "Security called this morning," Michael began, not looking at her, focused instead on the skyline as if Chicago itself might offer solutions. They noted an irregularity in the access logs for the executive gym. "When attraction threatens your career, do you run towards safety or risk everything? Which matters more, security or connection?" "I explained the situation," Danielle said, voice deliberately professional. "I was authorized to use the facilities after hours. I didn't expect. I've handled it," he interrupted, finally turning to face her. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, suggesting a sleepless night that matched her own. "The logs have been updated to reflect a maintenance check. The matter is closed." Relief flooded her system, followed immediately by suspicion. Nothing came without cost in corporate America, especially favors from men in corner offices. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "I appreciate your discretion." "Don't." Michael moved to his desk, putting the massive glass surface between them. "I didn't do it for you. A scandal benefits neither of us." His directness stung, but she respected it. "No pretense. No games." "Of course," Danielle nodded, adjusting the portfolio clutched in her hands. "If that's all, I should return to the quarterly reconciliation reports." "It's not all." Michael pressed a button on his desk phone. "Janet, hold my calls for the next 30 minutes. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please sit." The leather chair felt too soft, too accommodating, as if trying to swallow her whole. Danielle perched on its edge, maintaining the posture her mother had drilled into her. "Sit like you belong in rooms they don't expect to see you in." "You've been with us 3 months," Michael said, reviewing a file she hadn't noticed before. "Your supervisors speak highly of your work, particularly your attention to regulatory compliance issues." This wasn't the conversation she'd expected. "I specialized in SEC regulations during my master's program." "I know." He closed the file. "Which is why I'm assigning you to the Westbrook acquisition team, effective immediately." The Westbrook deal, the company's largest acquisition attempt in a decade. Junior accountants didn't get within miles of such projects. "That's a significant promotion," she said carefully, searching his face. "May I ask why?" Michael's expression remained unreadable. "Because you're qualified, and because it's the furthest desk from my office, which should minimize any uncomfortable encounters." So that was it. Shipping her to another floor, another team. Out of sight, out of mind. Practical, if somewhat cowardly. "I see," Danielle said, disappointment coloring her tone despite her best efforts. "No, you don't." Michael leaned forward. "The Westbrook team reports directly to me. Weekly meetings, unrestricted access. It's not exile, Miss Harris. It's opportunity." Confusion replaced disappointment. "I don't understand." "Neither do I," he admitted, the first crack in his CEO veneer. "But last night happened. We can't unhappen it. What we can do is be professionals and ensure it doesn't disrupt 2 promising careers." The air between them charged with something beyond professional courtesy, an awareness neither acknowledged, but both felt. His eyes held hers a moment too long, dropped briefly to her lips, then away. "The cameras didn't capture everything," he said, standing suddenly to lock his office door. "And what they missed could cost us both everything." Danielle's pulse quickened. "What exactly did they miss, Mr. Callahan?" "The way I looked at you," he said quietly. Security footage doesn't capture expressions, Ms. Harris. And I'm afraid mine was inappropriate. The admission hung between them, dangerous and electric. A powerful man admitting vulnerability created its own gravitational pull. So was mine, she whispered before she could stop herself. Something shifted in his expression, relief, hunger, recognition. Whatever wall stood between CEO and junior accountant thinned dangerously in that moment of shared confession. This complicates things, Michael said, returning to his desk as if distance might restore sanity. Then uncomplicate them, Danielle challenged. I need this job. You need discretion. Let's be adults about this. His mouth quirked in what might have been respect. The Westbrook team, it is then, starting tomorrow. Rain lashed against the windows of Danielle's apartment, the storm matching her internal turmoil. 3 a.m, and sleep remained impossibly distant. The Westbrook assignment documents lay spread across her kitchen table, complex financials that would normally capture her full attention. Instead, her mind replayed the moment in Michael's office when something unspoken passed between them, something neither had the right to acknowledge. Her phone lit up unexpectedly, the screen bright in the darkened apartment. Unknown number. Still reviewing the Westbrook files? Her fingers hovered over the screen. Only one person would have both her number and knowledge of her assignment. Danielle, Mr. Callahan? Unknown number. Michael, please. It's 3 a.m. and we're texting. I think we're beyond formalities. Have you ever made rules specifically because you knew you'd be tempted to break them? Did they protect you? Or just make the forbidden more desirable? She saved the contact before responding. Danielle, yes, still reviewing. The Malaysian subsidiary has interesting tax structures. Michael, that's not why you're awake. The directness stunned her. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared as he composed another message. Michael, I can't sleep either. We need to address what's happening. Danielle stared at the screen, heart pounding. What exactly was happening? An accidental encounter? Unprofessional awareness? Unspoken attraction? All wrapped in power dynamics that made any acknowledgement dangerous. Danielle, nothing is happening. Nothing can happen. Michael, hence my insomnia. A laugh escaped her lips despite everything. At least he was honest. Michael, the board executive committee meeting is tomorrow. Your name will come up. Ice flooded her veins. Danielle, why? Michael, standard review of strategic reassignments. They'll want justification for moving a junior accountant to the Westbrook team. Danielle, what will you tell them? Michael, the truth. That you spotted regulatory concerns others missed. That we need your expertise. Relief washed through her, followed by something dangerously close to disappointment. Part of her, the reckless, unprofessional part, almost wished for complications. Danielle, thank you. That's appropriate. Michael, I'm not a good man, Danielle, but I try to be a fair one. The admission felt intimate, a glimpse behind the corporate mask. She considered her response carefully. Danielle, good men don't become CEOs before 40. Fair ones don't last long either. Michael, harsh assessment. Danielle, realistic one. I grew up watching powerful men take what they wanted. Michael, is that what you think I'm doing? The question pierced her defenses. Was it? The promotion was legitimate. Her qualifications were real, but the timing coming after that moment in the locker room. Danielle, I think neither of us can afford rumors. I worked too hard to be reduced to office gossip. Michael agreed, which brings me to my proposal. She tensed at the word choice. Michael, professional proposal. We need a strategy that protects both of us. A strategy, like a business plan for avoiding scandal. It was so corporate, so clinical, it almost made her laugh again. Danielle, I'm listening. Michael, mentorship program. Official, documented. Explains our interactions, creates legitimate reasons for meetings. It was clever. Convert potential scandal into corporate initiative. Danielle, and when people talk anyway. Michael, people always talk. Documentation gives us defense. She considered it, turning the idea over like one of her accounting puzzles. It created structure, boundaries, and most importantly, an explanation that had nothing to do with locker rooms or lingering glances. Danielle, I accept your proposal. With conditions. Michael, name them. Danielle, 1. Real mentorship. My career advancement isn't pretend. 2. Professional boundaries stay intact. 3. If either of us feels complications, we acknowledge it privately and adjust accordingly. The minutes stretched as she waited for his response, rain drumming against the windows. Michael agreed to all conditions. I've drafted a formal outline. We'll send in the morning for your review before filing with HR. So businesslike, so controlled. Yet beneath the professional veneer, they were negotiating something far more complicated than a mentorship program. Danielle, deal. She set down her phone, feeling oddly like she'd just signed a contract in invisible ink. The official document would say one thing, while the subtext remained unwritten but understood. The rain eased outside, droplets trailing down her window like tears. She'd come to Chicago with nothing but ambition and determination, fought for every opportunity, and now stood at a dangerous crossroads. The professional path forward was clear, but bordered by precipices on either side. Her phone lit up one more time. Michael, the board meets at 2 p.m. Dressed for scrutiny. They'll have questions. Then, a moment later, Michael, you'll be brilliant. You always are. The compliment warmed her unexpectedly. She typed her response, deleted it, then wrote something safer. Danielle, thank you for the warning. Good night, Michael. His text arrived at midnight. The board wants to meet us together. Someone knows more than they should. Danielle stared at the message, ice crawling through her veins. The carefully constructed story they'd built might not be enough after all. And tomorrow, she'd stand beside Michael before the board, pretending the electricity between them was nothing more than professional respect. The next morning arrived with relentless sunshine that belied the storm clouds gathering inside Callahan Enterprises. Danielle stood before her closet, evaluating each piece with new scrutiny. Not just professional, bulletproof. She selected a charcoal pencil skirt, crisp white blouse, and structured navy blazer. Power colors, power silhouette, nothing that hinted at femininity or vulnerability. Across town, Michael methodically knotted his red tie, armor of a different sort. 20 floors below, board members were already arriving, earlier than usual. Janet had texted their names, including Preston Williams, the most conservative board member who rarely attended committee meetings. When did you last pretend indifference while feeling everything? How long did your performance last before the truth broke through? Danielle arrived exactly 45 minutes before the meeting. Michael had arranged a conference room for their preparation, away from curious eyes on the executive floor. They've added 2 members to the committee, Michael said without preamble as she entered. Williams and Sean. Neither are allies. Danielle nodded, absorbing this. What's their angle? Williams thinks I'm too progressive with company culture. Sean wants his nephew in senior management. Michael handed her a folder. Your official mentorship agreement. HR approved this morning. The document felt substantial in her hands. Official, legitimate. A shield against rumors, but also a binding contract that would tie her professional future to Michael's in ways neither had fully considered. Page 3 outlines the professional development goals. Michael continued, all business now. Quarterly objectives, skill targets. Everything documented and measurable. Very thorough, Danielle noted, scanning the pages. Too thorough. Like a fortress built against accusations neither would voice. We need to align our stories, Michael said, standing uncomfortably close as they reviewed the documents together. When asked how this mentorship originated, the answer is your work on the Henderson audit. You identified compliance issues that caught my attention. The Henderson audit was classified, Danielle pointed out. Only senior staff had access. Michael's mouth quirked. You have access now. Congratulations on your retroactive clearance. She almost smiled. Creating quite the paper trail, aren't we? Necessary fiction, he replied, his voice dropping slightly. The best lies contain elements of truth. The truth being that he had noticed her, just not for her accounting skills. The air between them thickened with unspoken awareness. And if they ask about the gym incident, she asked quietly. Michael's jaw tightened. Maintenance check, wrong door, professional apology. 10 seconds of awkwardness, nothing more. Is that what it was to you? The question slipped out before she could stop it, crossing the carefully drawn line they'd established. His eyes met hers, something dangerous flickering there. We both know it wasn't. The admission hung between them, electric and forbidden. For one breathless moment, Danielle thought he might step closer, erase the professional distance they'd constructed. Instead, his phone chimed with a reminder. Michael stepped back, the spell broken. "Review these talking points," he said, voice returning to its CEO cadence. "They'll likely separate us for questioning. Stay consistent." The preparation continued methodically, anticipating questions, crafting responses, building a narrative that protected both their reputations and careers. Michael moved around the conference room with controlled energy, occasionally calling colleagues for background information, demonstrating why he ran a Fortune 500 company before age 40. Danielle matched his focus, adding insights on regulatory frameworks that genuinely impressed him. Their combined expertise formed something formidable. Mentor and protege on paper equals in execution. By the time they finished, something had shifted between them. The performance they planned had become partially real. Her mind did complement his. His experience did balance her theoretical knowledge. The mentorship, created as cover, might actually benefit them both professionally. "You're ready," Michael said finally, checking his watch. "We have 20 minutes before the meeting. Take a break, gather yourself." Danielle nodded, suddenly realizing they'd worked through lunch. As if reading her mind, Michael opened a drawer in the credenza, revealing protein bars and bottled water. "CEO survival kit," he explained with a small smile. Board meetings often run through meals. The casual gesture, sharing his private stash, felt strangely intimate. Danielle accepted a bar, their fingers brushing briefly. Neither acknowledged the contact, but neither pulled away quite fast enough either. "We need to discuss your promotion," he said, voice low. "Over dinner, away from here, where no one's watching." The invitation hung between them, professional on its surface, potentially dangerous underneath. To discuss the mentorship program, Danielle clarified, offering him the plausible deniability they both needed. "Of course," Michael replied, his eyes saying something his words could not. "Strictly business." They both recognized the lie, but neither called it out. Some fictions were necessary for survival in the corporate jungle, and perhaps for surviving whatever was growing between them as well. The restaurant occupied the entire 80th floor of a downtown high-rise, Chicago sprawling beneath it like a glittering carpet. Floor-to-ceiling windows transformed the city into artwork, while inside, soft lighting gleamed against dark wood and white tablecloths. A pianist played something classical and understated in the corner. "Mr. Callahan," the maitre d' greeted with practiced deference. "Your usual table is ready." Danielle felt eyes tracking their progress across the dining room. Curious, evaluating, assuming. Michael walked slightly ahead, navigating the space with the confidence of belonging. She matched his stride, chin lifted, refusing to look intimidated despite the knot in her stomach. Their table occupied a corner with spectacular views and strategic privacy. Michael held her chair, a gesture that felt both courtly and presumptuous. "The board meeting went well," he said once they were seated, a statement rather than a question. "When did someone from a different world see parts of you that you normally hide? Did it make you run or lean closer?" "Better than expected," Danielle agreed. "Williams seemed particularly interested in my background." Williams is always interested in backgrounds, especially for people who don't match his country club membership profile. The observation carried an edge that surprised her. "You don't like him." "I don't like what he represents," Michael corrected. "Old money, old thinking. He believes hierarchy matters more than results." A waiter appeared, presenting wine menus with ceremonial gravity. "The Barolo," Michael said without opening his, "and water for both of us." Danielle bristled slightly at the presumption. "I would have preferred to choose my own wine." Michael looked genuinely surprised. "Force of habit. Please, select whatever you'd like." She opened the leather-bound menu, then froze at the prices. The cheapest bottle cost more than her monthly utility bills. The Barolo is fine, she conceded, closing the menu to hide her discomfort. Michael's expression softened with understanding. First rule of business dinners: never reveal when you're out of your depth. Is that what I'm doing? Danielle asked, embarrassment sharpening her tone. We all do it, Michael said, surprising her again. My first executive dinner, I ordered escargot because I thought it was a fish. Nearly choked when they brought out snails. The image of polished, perfect Michael Callahan gagging on unexpected gastropods made her laugh despite herself. The great CEO has weaknesses after all, she teased. Something changed in his expression, a guard lowering. More than you know. The wine arrived, saving her from responding to that dangerous admission. The sommelier poured with theatrical precision, and Michael performed the tasting ritual with practiced ease. To successful partnerships, he said, raising his glass. Professional partnerships, Danielle clarified, though the distinction felt increasingly blurred. They sipped in silence, the wine rich and complex on her tongue. Worth the price? She couldn't tell, but it complemented the atmosphere. Exclusive, rarefied, a world away from her studio apartment with its second-hand furniture and carefully budgeted groceries. Tell me something that's not in your HR file, Michael said suddenly. Danielle considered deflecting, but found herself answering honestly. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through undergrad. Mornings at a coffee shop, days at the university accounting office, nights waiting tables. Michael nodded, absorbing this. That explains your work ethic. Necessity explains my work ethic, she corrected. When failure means homelessness, you don't have the luxury of mediocrity. He accepted the gentle rebuke with grace. Fair point. My struggles were different. Were there any? The question slipped out, more challenging than she'd intended. Instead of offense, Michael appeared to appreciate her directness. Different kinds. Expectations can be their own prison. My father announced I would run Callahan Industries when I was 7 years old. My entire life was engineered toward that outcome. Most would consider that privilege, not struggle, Danielle observed. It was both, Michael said simply. I'm not claiming equivalence to your challenges. Just acknowledging that golden handcuffs are still handcuffs. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through their bubble of privacy. Michael, I thought that was you. They both looked up to see James Foster, Chief Financial Officer, approaching their table with his wife. Danielle recognized her from company photographs. Blonde, polished, draped in designer clothing that signaled old money. James, Michael stood, handshake transitioning to backslapping half-hug. Good to see you outside the office. You know Danielle Harris, our new addition to the Westbrook team. Foster's eyebrows rose slightly. The mentorship program. Yes, I heard about that today. Quite the fast track you found yourself on, Ms. Harris. The implication hung in the air, just subtle enough to maintain deniability. Ms. Harris identified regulatory concerns in the Malaysia markets that could have cost us millions, Michael said, his tone pleasant but firm. Talent deserves recognition, regardless of seniority. Mrs. Foster smiled with practiced warmth. How wonderful to reward merit. So refreshing in today's climate. The comment carried double meaning that made Danielle's skin prickle. She maintained her professional smile, years of customer service experience serving her well. The Westbrook acquisition presents fascinating challenges, she said, steering towards safe professional territory, particularly the offshore holding structures. Foster's expression shifted from condescension to mild interest. You've reviewed the Cayman entities already? Thoroughly, Danielle replied, seizing the opportunity to demonstrate her expertise. The transfer pricing documentation needs strengthening before SEC review. As she outlined specific concerns, Foster's dismissive attitude gradually transformed into reluctant respect. Michael watched the exchange with subtle satisfaction, occasionally adding context that highlighted their collaborative approach. When the Fosters finally continued to their table, something had changed in the air between Danielle and Michael. The performance they delivered, professional mentor and promising protege, had felt almost natural. His hand covered hers when the check arrived. "This isn't about work anymore," he whispered. "We both know that." The touch sent electricity racing up her arm, desire mixing dangerously with ambition. Both were treacherous in different ways. Thunder cracked outside the Callahan Enterprises tower, the summer storm turning afternoon into premature evening. Most employees had rushed home before the deluge, leaving the 30th floor eerily quiet except for the rain lashing against floor-to-ceiling windows. Danielle hunched over financial projections for the Westbrook acquisition, numbers blurring after 12 straight hours. 3 weeks into her mentorship, she'd proven her value repeatedly, identifying tax structures that could save millions while eliminating regulatory red flags. The work consumed her, partly from ambition, partly to avoid examining her growing feelings for Michael. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the floor into darkness. "Perfect," she muttered, reaching for her phone's flashlight. The beam cut through darkness, creating sharp shadows across her workstation. When did you last cross a line that felt inevitable? Was the moment worth what it cost afterward? Heavy footsteps approached from the executive corridor, deliberate, measured. Only one person would still be here this late. Danielle. Michael's voice preceded him, followed by his own phone light sweeping the darkness. "Over here," she answered, heartbeat quickening despite her best efforts. His beam found her, momentarily blinding. Power grids down across downtown. Backup generators are running essential systems only. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face in stark white light. Handsome, tired, and something else she couldn't quite read. Without the normal boundaries of bright offices and watchful employees, the atmosphere between them shifted, became charged with possibility. "I was just finishing," Danielle said, gathering papers into her portfolio. "I should head home before the streets flood." "Too late for that," Michael replied, moving to the windows. Below, Chicago had transformed into a maze of water-filled streets and stalled traffic. "Nobody's going anywhere for at least an hour." As if confirming his assessment, her phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Flash flooding, road closures, transit delays. "Trapped, then," she said, trying to keep her tone light despite the heaviness settling between them. Michael's phone rang, the building security manager updating him on the situation. She watched him take charge, issuing calm directives about elevator safety and emergency protocols. CEO, even in crisis, shoulders squared against chaos. When he disconnected, something had changed in his stance, a decision made. "My office has a better view of the storm," he said simply. "And better whiskey." The invitation hung between them, innocent on its surface, but loaded with potential beneath. This wasn't a crowded restaurant with colleagues nearby. This was darkness and isolation and plausible deniability. "Just one drink," Danielle agreed, following his light down the corridor. His corner office featured 3 glass walls showcasing Chicago's stormy tantrum. Lightning transformed the skyline into a photographer's dream. Stark contrasts, dramatic shadows, beauty in chaos. Michael opened a hidden panel revealing a small bar, pouring amber liquid into crystal tumblers without asking her preference. Their fingers brushed during the handoff, lingering a moment too long. "To weather disruptions," he said, voice lower than usual. "Both literal and figurative," she added, maintaining eye contact over the rim of her glass. The whiskey burned pleasantly, warming her from inside as they stood silently watching lightning dance across buildings. With each flash, she stole glances at his profile, strong jaw tensed, eyes reflecting electric light. "The Westbrook numbers look good," she offered, retreating to professional territory. "I didn't bring you here to discuss Westbrook," Michael replied, setting down his glass. The directness startled her. "Then why did you?" The question emerged softer than intended. Michael turned fully toward her, professional mask slipping. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't think about you. About that night in the locker room. About what happens every time we're alone." The confession hung between them, impossible to take back. 3 weeks of careful boundaries, of maintaining the fiction that they were merely mentor and protege, collapsed under the weight of his honesty. "We can't," Danielle whispered, even as she made no move to increase the distance between them. "I know," he agreed, stepping closer despite his words. "It could damage your career, my leadership, the company's reputation. All the logical reasons," she said, setting down her own glass. "So why does logic feel irrelevant right now?" Another lightning flash, closer this time. Thunder followed almost immediately, rattling the windows. "Because we've been fighting this since the moment I opened that door," Michael said, close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle, intoxicating. "Fighting and losing," Danielle admitted, crossing the final line between professional restraint and personal desire. The next lightning strike illuminated their first kiss. His hands cupping her face, her fingers clutching his shirt, bodies pressed against the window, overlooking a city too consumed by storm to notice two people surrendering to their own. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension exploding into hunger neither bothered to disguise anymore. His hands traced her curves through her silk blouse, leaving heat in their wake. Her fingers tangled in his hair, destroying its perfect arrangement. For minutes that stretched like hours, they explored each other against the backdrop of electric sky and rain-slicked glass. The storm outside matched the one breaking loose within them. Powerful, inevitable, potentially destructive. When they finally separated, breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together, reality began seeping back into the moment. "This changes everything," Danielle whispered against his lips. "Only if we let it," Michael replied, hands still gripping her waist as if afraid she might vanish. Another crack of thunder, another flash of clarity. Danielle stepped back, straightening her blouse with trembling hands. "We need boundaries," she said, though her body screamed the opposite. "Professional ones." Michael nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You're right. This was a moment," she finished for him. "One that can't happen again." Even as she said it, both recognized the lie. The dam had broken. Trying to rebuild it seemed futile. The lights flickered back to life suddenly, harsh fluorescence destroying the intimate darkness that had sheltered their transgression. Reality rushed back with brutal efficiency. She was still a junior employee. He was still CEO. The power dynamics remained unchanged despite what had just happened between them. "I should go," Danielle said, gathering her portfolio, needing escape to process what had just occurred. Michael didn't try to stop her, understanding the necessity of space. "The Wesper presentation is Monday. We should prepare together this weekend." Business again. Structure. Professional framework. Both clung to it like a life raft. "I'll be available," she replied, already moving toward the door. His phone lit up with an incoming call just as she reached the threshold. The board chairman's name flashed on the screen as Danielle glanced back one last time, seeing Michael's face transform from lover back to CEO in an instant. His phone lit up with the board chairman's name as her lipstick stained his collar, and 3 words appeared: "We need answers." Whatever fragile connection they just forged now faced its first test, and Danielle knew with cold certainty that it wouldn't be the last. The conference room on the 31st floor had been designed to intimidate. Oval table of polished mahogany, leather chairs tall enough to make visitors feel small, and views of competitor buildings deliberately positioned lower than Callahan Enterprises. Today, it served as courtroom, with Danielle seated alone at one end, facing 4 members of the Ethics Committee. "Ms. Harris," began Eleanor Winters, Chief Compliance Officer, her silver bob framing a face that had witnessed 3 decades of corporate misbehavior. "Thank you for joining us on such short notice." The politeness was theater. Security had escorted Danielle directly from her desk, her team watching with undisguised curiosity. No explanation given. No time to warn Michael. When forced apart, did you follow rules or find ways around them? Which betrays more, breaking rules or breaking trust? "Of course," Danielle replied, maintaining professional composure despite her racing heart. "How can I assist the committee?" Eleanor placed a folder on the table, opening it with deliberate slowness. "We're conducting a standard review of the mentorship program, particularly the selection criteria. Relief flooded Danielle momentarily. Just the mentorship review. Not the kiss, not the increasingly complicated feelings developing between her and Michael. Understand, she said, relaxing slightly. The program has been tremendously valuable for my professional development. Eleanor's thin smile never reached her eyes. I'm sure it has. Tell us how you were selected. Danielle recited the prepared narrative flawlessly. Her work on the Henderson audit, the regulatory issues she identified, Michael's recognition of her talents. All technically true, if strategically rearranged in timeline. Interesting, said James Foster, the CFO who had interrupted their dinner weeks earlier. Because the Henderson audit wasn't accessible to junior staff until after your mentorship began. The trap snapped shut with quiet efficiency. Danielle's mind raced, searching for explanation without revealing the locker room incident. Mr. Callahan provided special clearance, she said carefully, to test my analytical abilities. Before or after you were selected for mentorship, pressed Foster, leaning forward. I believe it was concurrent with the initial discussions. Danielle hedged, walking the line between misdirection and outright lying. Eleanor slid a document across the table. This is the security log from the executive gym 6 weeks ago. Both you and Mr. Callahan accessed the facilities after hours within minutes of each other. Ice flooded Danielle's veins. They knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Yes, she acknowledged, choosing honesty where possible. I used the gym after hours as permitted by company policy. Mr. Callahan and I encountered each other briefly. Define briefly, Foster pressed, expression predatory. Perhaps 2 minutes, Danielle replied steadily. He had mistakenly entered the women's locker room while I was changing. He apologized and left immediately. The committee exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. And this encounter had no bearing on your selection for the mentorship program? Eleanor asked, voice dripping with skepticism. None whatsoever, Danielle stated firmly. My qualifications speak for themselves. My work on Westbrook has already identified potential savings of over $12 million. Your work has been exemplary, agreed the third committee member, Thomas Chun, which makes the timing of events all the more curious. Danielle maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. I can't speak to timing coincidences. I can only affirm that my selection was based on merit. And your current relationship with Mr. Callahan is strictly professional? Eleanor asked, the key question finally emerging. One heartbeat of hesitation before answering, barely perceptible, but present. The memory of his lips on hers during the thunderstorm flashed unbidden. Completely professional, Danielle confirmed, the live bitter on her tongue. He is my mentor and supervisor, nothing more. Eleanor studied her face for several uncomfortable seconds before nodding. Thank you for your candor, Ms. Harris. Please wait outside while we speak with Mr. Callahan. The hallway felt 20 degrees cooler than the interrogation room. Danielle leaned against the wall, eyes closed, gathering her composure. 10 minutes later, the door opened, and Michael emerged looking thunderous, jaw tight with controlled fury. He locked eyes with her, giving a nearly imperceptible shake of his head, warning against speaking here. Ms. Harris, please continue with your regular duties. The committee has completed their review. Translation: say nothing, act normal, we'll talk later. She nodded, professional mask firmly in place. Thank you, Mr. Callahan. They walked in opposite directions under the watchful eyes of Eleanor's assistant, maintaining perfect, appropriate distance. 6 hours later, her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Hotel Blake, room 1217, 8 p.m. We need to talk. Come alone. M. Danielle stared at the message, understanding its implications. A hotel, off company property. No cameras, no witnesses, no electronic trails on company devices. The smart choice was ignoring it, maintaining deniability, protecting her career from whatever storm was brewing. Instead, at 8:02 p.m., she knocked quietly on the door of room 1217. Michael opened it immediately, looking nothing like the polished CEO, tie gone, shirt partially unbuttoned, hair disheveled as if he'd been running hands through it repeatedly. He checked the hallway before pulling her inside. "They have the elevator security footage," he said without preamble. "All of it, including what happened in the dark." Horror washed through her. The storm? But how? "Emergency backup systems include security cameras," Michael explained grimly. "They switched to infrared during outages. Everything was recorded." "Everything," Danielle whispered, remembering hands wandering, bodies pressed together. "Enough," he confirmed. Foster pushed for immediate termination. "Yours, not mine, of course." Classic double standard. The injustice burned. "Of course. You're the powerful CEO. I'm the disposable junior employee who must have seduced you." "I shut that down immediately," Michael said, anger flashing. "Made it clear any action against you would result in my resignation and subsequent wrongful termination suit against the company." The revelation stunned her. "You would quit? Over this?" "Over you," he corrected quietly. "There's a difference." The words hung between them, weighty with implication. Michael continued before she could process them fully. "I negotiated a compromise. The mentorship continues, but with oversight. Quarterly reviews. Professional development metrics. All meetings documented and in public spaces. Supervised like teenagers," Danielle said bitterly. "Better than terminated," Michael countered. "This protects your position and career trajectory. While feeding the rumor mill," she added. "Everyone will assume the worst." "Let them," Michael said, moving closer. "We know the truth." But what was the truth? That they had crossed professional boundaries? That whatever existed between them transcended mentor and protege? That she couldn't stop thinking about him, even when career suicide lay in that direction? "And what happens next time we're alone?" Danielle asked softly. "What happens now?" The question encompassed their immediate situation, alone in a hotel room, outside company jurisdiction, and their broader relationship. Michael's expression softened as he reached for her hand. "That depends on what you want, Danielle. Not as my employee, not as my mentee, as yourself." The touch of his fingers against hers sent familiar electricity racing up her arm. Professional consequences seemed distant compared to the immediate gravity between them. "I want," she began, then stopped, reconsidering. "I should want my career protected, my reputation intact. I should walk away right now." "But," Michael prompted gently. "But I can't stop thinking about the storm," she admitted. "About what started in darkness." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath. "Neither can I." This time when they kissed, no storm masked their choice. No power outage provided excuse. They chose each other with clear eyes, understanding the risks, accepting them anyway. The kiss deepened, hands exploring with greater purpose than before. Her blazer fell to the floor, his shirt buttons opened beneath her fingers. Each barrier removed represented another professional boundary crossed, another step into territory from which they might never recover professionally. "We can stop," Michael murmured against her neck, giving her final opportunity to retreat to safety. "I don't want to stop," Danielle replied, making her choice with full awareness of its potential cost. They moved toward the bed together, career considerations temporarily eclipsed by something neither had planned for, but both now recognized as inevitable since that first moment in the locker room. Morning light revealed the photographer on the building across from his bedroom window, and the telephoto lens aimed directly at them. The Chicago Business Journal headline appeared at 6:17 a.m. "Callahan Enterprises IN Mentorship Scandal." Below it, a grainy but unmistakable photo of Michael and Danielle entering the Hotel Blake together, time-stamped 8:02 p.m. Danielle saw it first, phone buzzing with text alerts while Michael showered. The room tilted around her as implications crashed through her consciousness. Career, reputation, future opportunities all potentially destroyed by a single photograph. When the world judged your choices, did you stand firm or bend to avoid pain? What did that decision cost you? "Michael," she called, voice tight with panic. "You need to see this. Now." He emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets still clinging to his shoulders. His expression shifted instantly upon seeing her face. What happened? She wordlessly handed him her phone. He scanned the article, jaw tightening with each paragraph. They have nothing concrete, he said finally. Hotel entry proves nothing about our relationship. It proves enough for speculation, Danielle countered. Read the comments section. He scrolled down, expression darkening further. The public verdict had already been rendered. Powerful CEO exploits young female employee. Callahan stock would take a hit. Board members would demand action. Damage control would require sacrifice. We need to get ahead of this, Michael said, switching to crisis management mode. I'll call PR and legal. We need statements prepared before markets open. Danielle watched him transform from the man who had held her through the night into the corporate executive she'd first met. Strategic, controlled, calculating. The shift hurt more than she expected. What's our story going to be? She asked quietly. The question halted his movement. The truth. That we're two consenting adults navigating a complicated situation. The truth, Danielle repeated flatly. That you're the CEO and I'm a junior accountant you met when you walked in on me changing? That we started sleeping together while you're supposedly mentoring my career? That truth. Michael's expression softened. Danielle, don't, she interrupted, gathering her clothes with trembling hands. I knew the risks. We both did. But seeing it play out is different than imagining it. Her phone buzzed again, a text from her roommate. OMG, are you okay? Your face is all over finance Twitter. Reality crashed harder. Not just their careers affected, but her entire life. Family would see this. Friends. Future employers. The narrative would follow her everywhere, reduced to the woman who slept with her boss. Michael's phone rang, board chairman demanding immediate explanation. As he answered, Danielle slipped into the bathroom to change, needing physical distance to think clearly. The woman in the mirror looked both familiar and foreign. Same features but different eyes. Harder, wiser. She applied makeup methodically, armor against what awaited outside. When she emerged, Michael was pacing, voice tight, as he spoke with legal counsel. No comment until the emergency board meeting, he was saying. 2 hours to prepare our position. He disconnected, turning to her with concern etched across his features. How are you holding up? The question, so personal amid professional catastrophe, nearly broke her composure. Processing, she managed. What's the board's position? They're divided, Michael said honestly. Some want immediate termination. Yours, obviously. Others recognize the potential discrimination suit that would create. The compromise position seems to be your transfer to another department, removing you from my direct supervision. Punishing me while protecting you, Danielle noted bitterly. How predictable. I won't let that happen, Michael promised, reaching for her hand. She stepped back, needing clarity untouched by his physical presence. This isn't just about jobs, Michael. It's about my entire future. Every interview, every position, this will follow me. The accountant who slept her way to promotion. That's my professional epitaph now. Only if we let it be, Michael argued. We fight the narrative. Show your work stands on its own merit. The Westbrook analysis alone proves your value. Westbrook, Danielle laughed hollowly. The project that put us together in the first place. They'll say you gave me that assignment because we were already involved. Were we? Michael challenged. Be honest, Danielle. That assignment came before anything physical happened between us. But after the locker room, she countered. After you saw me. After something changed between us. He couldn't deny it. Attraction had influenced his decision, even if her qualifications were legitimate. What do you want to do? He asked finally. The question hung between them. Deceptively simple, yet encompassing their entire future, professional and personal. I don't know, Danielle admitted, vulnerability breaking through her anger. Part of me wants to run, change my name, move cities, start over. Part wants to fight, prove my worth beyond any relationship. And part, Michael prompted gently. Part wonders if last night was worth whatever comes next, she finished softly. If you are. The raw honesty silenced them both. His phone buzzed again, another board member demanding explanation. "We have 2 hours before the emergency meeting," Michael said, ignoring the call. "I can have a statement drafted protecting your reputation, emphasizing your qualifications, taking full responsibility, sacrificing yourself?" Danielle asked, surprised. "If necessary," he confirmed without hesitation. "My position is more secure than yours. I can weather this storm." The offer touched something deep within her. Recognition that whatever existed between them transcended physical attraction or convenience. He was willing to protect her at professional cost to himself. "No," she decided, straightening her shoulders. "We face this together. I won't be portrayed as victim or villain. I made my choices knowingly." Relief and admiration flashed across his face. Together, then, as they prepared to leave separately, one final attempt at discretion rendered mostly pointless now, Michael pulled her close one last time. "I don't regret it," he whispered against her hair. "Not one moment. Despite everything, neither did she." "I'll resign tomorrow," he said against her shoulder. "But first, there's something I need to tell you about who leaked those photos." "And why?" The Callahan Enterprises boardroom felt like a funeral chamber. Heavy silence, accusatory glances, the weight of judgment pressing down from all sides. 12 board members seated along the mahogany table, Michael at one end, Danielle positioned deliberately apart at a side table. Physical distance emphasizing their supposed separation. Board Chairman William Hargrove called the emergency session to order with practiced gravity. At 72, he'd weathered corporate scandals before, though never quite like this. "We face an unprecedented situation," he began, silver eyebrows drawn together in disapproval. "One that threatens company stability, stock value, and public confidence. When did you discover you were being used in someone else's game? Did you retreat or decide to fight back?" Danielle maintained perfect posture despite the humiliation of being displayed like evidence in a trial. She wore her most conservative suit. Navy blue, high neckline, every button fastened like armor. "Mr. Callahan," Hargrove continued, "would you care to explain the nature of your relationship with Ms. Harris?" All eyes shifted to Michael, who remained uncharacteristically silent for several beats, measuring his response. "Ms. Harris is a talented financial analyst whose work on the Westbrook acquisition has identified potential savings exceeding $12 million, he began carefully. "Our professional relationship began as mentor and mentee, focused on developing her considerable talents. And now," pressed Eleanor Winters, the same compliance officer who had interrogated Danielle previously. Michael met her gaze directly. "Now our relationship includes personal elements outside office hours." The deliberate phrasing, technically accurate while revealing nothing about timing or progression, demonstrated why he'd reached CEO by 38. Murmurs circulated among board members. This mentorship began after an incident in the executive gym. James Foster interjected, clearly enjoying Michael's discomfort. "Where you accidentally observed Ms. Harris in a state of undress." "Correct." Danielle flinched internally at the crude characterization, but maintained her professional mask. "There was a brief, accidental encounter," Michael acknowledged, "which was documented appropriately with HR at the time." "And did this encounter influence your decision to create this special mentorship position?" Foster pressed. "My decisions are based on talent and potential benefit to this company," Michael replied evenly. "Ms. Harris's qualifications speak for themselves. Yet here we are," Hargrove sighed dramatically, "addressing a scandal that has already impacted our stock price by 3% in pre-market trading." "A temporary fluctuation," Michael countered, "based on gossip rather than fundamentals." "Gossip with photographic evidence," Eleanor noted dryly. Danielle had remained silent, following their attorney's advice to speak only when directly addressed. That moment had arrived. "Ms. Harris," Hargrove turned his attention to her. "Do you feel your relationship with Mr. Callahan has benefited your career unfairly?" The question was a trap. Deny it, and she appeared naive or dishonest. Confirm it, and she admitted ethical violations. "My advancement has been based on measurable contributions," she answered carefully. Every promotion has been documented with specific achievements. I've earned my position through results, not relationships. Admirable perspective. Hargrove nodded condescendingly. However, perception matters as much as reality in publicly traded companies. The appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as impropriety itself, which is why I've prepared this. Michael interjected, sliding folders to each board member. A reorganization proposal that removes Ms. Harris from my direct reporting line while maintaining her valuable contributions to the Westbrook acquisition. Danielle's head snapped up in surprise. This hadn't been part of their discussion. Michael continued without meeting her eyes. Under this structure, Ms. Harris would report directly to VP of Finance Thomas Morgan, with dotted line responsibility to the acquisition team. Her compensation and responsibilities remain unchanged, while eliminating any perception of conflict. The board members reviewed the proposal with varying expressions, some relieved at the easy solution, others disappointed at being denied corporate blood sport. This seems reasonable, Hargrove acknowledged reluctantly. However, the personal relationship is between two consenting adults and legal under company policy provided proper reporting structures are maintained, Michael finished firmly, which this reorganization accomplishes. Foster wasn't satisfied. The damage is already done. Clients are calling. Partners are questioning our judgment. Someone must take responsibility. I do, Michael stated simply. As CEO, all company matters ultimately fall under my authority. If the board feels my leadership has been compromised, you have mechanisms to address that. The implication was clear: push too hard, and he would force a confidence vote. With most major shareholders still supporting him and no clear succession plan, the board's position wasn't as strong as they pretended. Hargrove recognized the standoff and opted for compromise. We'll implement the reorganization immediately. Ms. Harris will transfer to Morgan's team effective today, and both parties will maintain strictly professional interactions within company properties and during business hours. Relief washed through Danielle. Career intact, if somewhat redirected. But something felt wrong about Michael's unilateral solution, presented without consultation. If I may, she spoke up unexpectedly, causing several board members to blink in surprise. I appreciate the proposed solution, but must note that I wasn't consulted about this transfer. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Michael finally looked at her, expression unreadable. While I understand the necessity, Danielle continued steadily, this approach perpetuates the narrative that I'm a piece to be moved rather than a professional with agency. I would have appreciated involvement in decisions affecting my career. Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly, perhaps the first hint of respect she'd shown. Noted, Ms. Harris, Hargrove responded stiffly. However, the board has decided. The board should recognize that treating Ms. Harris as collateral damage rather than a valuable team member exposes us to potential legal action. Michael interrupted smoothly. Her point about consultation is valid and should be addressed. Tension crackled between them, allies yet adversaries in this strange moment. Fine, Hargrove conceded. Ms. Harris, do you accept the transfer to Morgan's team under the terms outlined? Danielle weighed her options quickly. Fight now and potentially lose everything, or accept the compromise and address the deeper issues with Michael privately. I accept the transfer, she said finally, with the understanding that my performance will be evaluated on merit alone going forward. Of course, Hargrove nodded, eager to conclude the uncomfortable session. This meeting is adjourned. Ms. Harris, please coordinate your transition with HR this afternoon. As board members filed out, Michael and Danielle remained seated, maintaining professional distance until the room emptied. When the door finally closed, leaving them alone, the carefully constructed facades crumbled. You should have told me about the transfer plan, she said quietly. There wasn't time, Michael replied, exhaustion evident in his voice. I needed something concrete to offer them before they demanded your termination. So you decided my future without me, Danielle observed, hurt mixing with anger. Just like everyone else in power has always done. The accusation landed visibly. Michael moved closer, lowering his voice despite the empty room. That wasn't my intention, he insisted. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection, Danielle countered. I need partnership, respect. If whatever is happening between us means anything, it has to be based on equality, not rescue. Something shifted in Michael's expression, recognition, perhaps, of his unconscious perpetuation of the very power dynamics they were fighting against. You're right, he acknowledged, surprising her with his candor. I reverted to CEO mode, problem-solving without consultation. Exactly what I've built my career on. And exactly what can't happen between us, Danielle added softly. Michael nodded, understanding dawning. This is new territory for me. I'm not accustomed to considering someone else's perspective in my decisions. Then learn, she said simply. Because I won't be a footnote in your story, Michael. Not professionally, not personally. The honesty between them, raw and uncomfortable but necessary, shifted something fundamental in their connection. This wasn't just about physical attraction or career navigation anymore. It was about seeing each other truly, beyond position and power. There's something else you should know, Michael said, glancing toward the door to ensure their privacy. The photo leak wasn't random. I've identified the source. Danielle tensed. Oh, Foster, Michael revealed, jaw tightening. But he's just the instrument. This goes deeper, to the Malaysian subsidiaries you flagged in your Westbrook analysis. The irregularities you found weren't accidental. Understanding dawned with chilling clarity. They're intentional. Someone's hiding something. Exactly, Michael confirmed grimly. And they're using our relationship as distraction from the real issue. Danielle processed this revelation, mind racing. I'm not just sleeping with the boss. I've accidentally threatened someone's financial scheme. We both have, Michael corrected, and they've shown they'll use anything to discredit us, including this. The personal suddenly collapsed into the professional, boundaries blurring once more. Whatever existed between them now faced external threat beyond just corporate gossip. Her accounting discovery revealed the 8-figure fraud. If we expose this, she whispered, they'll destroy everything to keep it hidden. Thomas Morgan's office smelled of leather and expensive cologne. As VP of Finance, he occupied the north corner of the 29th floor, one level below Michael but still high enough to look down on most of Chicago. Danielle sat across from her new supervisor, watching him review the Westbrook files with narrowed eyes. These Malaysian holdings, Morgan said, tapping a spreadsheet. You flagged them repeatedly. Why? The ownership structures change quarterly, Danielle explained, choosing her words carefully. Always right before financial reporting deadlines. It creates artificial tax advantages while concealing the actual ownership trail. When fighting impossible odds, who did you trust with the real truth? What made you certain they wouldn't betray you? Morgan's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or concern. And you shared these findings with Michael, with Mr. Callahan? Yes, Danielle confirmed. It's part of why he assigned me to the acquisition team. These structures could create significant liability post-merger. Morgan closed the folder, steepling his fingers. At 52, he had navigated enough corporate politics to become either ally or enemy. Which one he'd be remained uncertain. Ms. Harris, let me be direct. Your transfer to my team comes with complications. The circumstances are unfortunate. You mean my relationship with Michael? Danielle stated flatly, refusing to feign ignorance. Among other things, Morgan nodded. Your findings on Westbrook have created waves. Powerful people are questioning whether your concerns are legitimate or distractions. The implication hung between them. Were findings being dismissed as the overzealous work of a woman sleeping with the CEO? The numbers don't lie, Danielle said firmly. Whatever people think of my personal choices, the financial irregularities exist independently. Morgan studied her for a long moment before reaching a decision. He stood, crossing to his door and locking it before returning to his desk. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room, he said, voice lowered despite the privacy. 3 years ago, I identified similar patterns in our Singapore expansion. When I raised concerns, I was suddenly reassigned to domestic operations. My analysis disappeared from company servers. Danielle's pulse quickened. Who was behind it? I never confirmed, Morgan replied. But Foster blocked every attempt to investigate. The board chairman quashed my formal request for external auditing. The pieces aligned with Michael's suspicions. And now I've stumbled onto something similar. Something bigger, Morgan corrected. The Malaysian structures connect to offshore accounts linked to 3 board members. The money movement exceeds $50 million annually. The figure stunned her. This wasn't creative accounting. It was potential fraud on a massive scale. Why tell me this? Danielle asked. You're taking a huge risk. Morgan's expression hardened. Because I've spent 20 years building this company's financial integrity. Because your relationship with Michael, complicated as it may be, gives you access he might actually listen to. And because sometimes we need to decide which principles matter most. An unlikely ally had emerged when she needed one most. Someone who valued truth over politics, integrity over convenience. I need proof, Danielle said, mind already racing through financial regulations and reporting requirements. Documentation that can't be explained away. Working on it, Morgan confirmed. But we need time and protection. Your connection with Michael provides both, ironically enough. How so? Everyone's watching your relationship drama, Morgan explained. Nobody's paying attention to what you're actually investigating. It's perfect cover, until it isn't. He slid a flash drive across his desk. Encrypted copies of everything I've found. Password is the date of the Singapore project cancellation. You'll find it in the archive announcements. Danielle pocketed the drive, understanding its value. Michael needs to see this. Carefully, Morgan cautioned. Not on company devices. Not on company property. They're watching both of you now. The warning sent a chill through her. The personal and professional had merged completely now, their relationship serving simultaneously as target and shield. Thank you, Danielle said, genuine gratitude in her voice. For believing me. For taking this risk. Morgan's smile held no humor. Don't thank me yet. This gets uglier before it gets better. And Ms. Harris? Watch Foster. He's been asking questions about your access credentials, your login history. Later that evening, in Michael's downtown apartment, they reviewed Morgan's files on a standalone laptop, connecting dangerous dots across continents and shell companies. This is methodical, Michael muttered, scrolling through transaction records. Professional. Someone with intimate knowledge of our reporting systems designed this. Danielle nodded, adding notes to their growing evidence board. A physical map of connections they'd created away from digital surveillance. The timing matters, she pointed out. These transfers always happen during major company announcements, acquisition news, quarterly reports, when everyone's attention is directed elsewhere. Including now, Michael realized. Our scandal hit right before the final Westbrook approval vote. Perfect timing to ensure minimal scrutiny of these accounts. Their fingers brushed as they reached for the same document. Electricity still present despite the corporate conspiracy unfolding around them. Michael's hand lingered on hers. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for all of this, for how it's affected you. Danielle met his gaze steadily. I'm not. Whatever's happening between us led to uncovering this. Sometimes clarity comes from complicated places. He leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from her face with unexpected tenderness. We need allies. People we can trust, absolutely. Morgan's a start, but we need more. I have someone, Danielle offered. My former professor at Northwestern. She consults for the SEC on complex fraud cases. No direct connections to Callahan Enterprises. Michael nodded, decision made. Contact her. Carefully. We'll need legal protection before we move forward. They worked through the night, building their case methodically, professional purpose, strengthening their personal connection. By morning, they had constructed a financial fortress, evidence secured against deletion, backups stored in multiple locations, a protection strategy that anticipated corporate countermoves. As dawn broke over the city, Michael pulled Danielle close, both exhausted but resolute. Foundation, he said, not as charity, but as legacy, with her name hidden in the blueprint. That's when wanting turned into responsibility. The following weeks unfolded in careful choreography. By day, Danielle worked under Morgan's supervision, documenting Malaysian irregularities under the guise of standard acquisition due diligence. By night, she met with Michael in rotating locations. Hotel conference rooms rented under different names, her professor's university office after hours, once even on a chartered boat on Lake Michigan, places where corporate eyes couldn't follow. They built their case methodically, moving in plain sight while concealing their true purpose. The board believed they were managing the fallout from their relationship scandal. In reality, they were assembling evidence of financial crimes. 2 worlds, 1 heart. How many times have you performed belonging just to keep people comfortable? Confess the role you play. Foster's team requested all my Westbrook analysis files today, Danielle reported, joining Michael at a corner table in a busy downtown restaurant. The location had been Michael's idea, public enough to seem innocent, loud enough to prevent eavesdropping. Did you provide them? Michael asked, maintaining casual posture despite the tension running between them. The sanitized versions, she confirmed. Everything flagging the Malaysian accounts is labeled as preliminary or unconfirmed to seem less threatening. Michael nodded approvingly. Good. The less alarmed they appear, the more time we have. Their fingers brushed as he passed her menu. A touch that still carried electric awareness despite the high-stakes corporate chess game surrounding them. Both had silently acknowledged that their connection had evolved beyond physical attraction into something deeper, forged in shared purpose and mutual respect. Morgan's been running interference with the auditing committee, Danielle continued, voice low, suggesting routine reviews of all international holdings, making our focus on Malaysia seem part of broader due diligence. Clever, Michael acknowledged. Any pushback? Foster tried to limit the scope, but Morgan held firm. He's good, plays the meticulous finance VP role perfectly. They ordered drinks, maintaining the appearance of a professional early dinner between colleagues. Anyone watching would see appropriate distance. Conversation focused on portfolios and papers rather than personal matters. My contact at the SEC has reviewed our preliminary evidence, Michael said once the waiter departed. She believes we have enough to trigger an initial inquiry, but not enough for formal charges yet. We need the original authorization documents. Danielle's expression remained neutral despite the challenge this presented. Those would be in Foster's secure archives. Electronic access is tracked and limited. Not during system maintenance, Michael countered, sliding a small folder toward her. IT has scheduled network upgrades this Friday night. All access monitoring will be offline for approximately 40 minutes. She absorbed this information, understanding its implications. You want me to access the archives during the maintenance window? Only if you're comfortable with the risk, Michael emphasized. This crosses a line, Danielle. Technically legal as part of your due diligence access, but definitely pushing boundaries. The concern in his voice, genuine worry for her rather than the investigation, touched something deep within her. Unlike their early interactions, power no longer defined their dynamic. Partnership had replaced hierarchy. I'll do it, she decided. Morgan can authorize my after-hours access for acquisition preparation. No one questions the junior analyst working late. Michael's hand covered hers briefly, a gesture of gratitude and protection. Be careful. These people have already proven they'll use personal attacks to discredit threats. The tenderness between them had evolved alongside their investigation, deeper, more nuanced than the initial attraction that had drawn them together. Shared purpose had transformed desire into something resembling love, though neither had voiced that dangerous word yet. Later that night, in the privacy of Danielle's apartment, they allowed themselves a rare moment of normalcy. Takeout containers spread across her coffee table, shoes kicked off, corporate masks temporarily set aside. Tell me something real, Michael requested suddenly, setting down his container. Something unrelated to Callahan Enterprises or Malaysian shell companies. The question surprised her, but Danielle welcomed the brief escape from conspiracy and corporate intrigue. I used to dance, she admitted. Ballet, from age 6 through college. It's how I paid part of my tuition, teaching weekend classes at community centers. Michael's expression softened with genuine interest. Why did you stop? Practical reasons, mostly, Danielle shrugged. Corporate accounting doesn't leave much time for gratuities. But I miss it. The discipline, the precision, the way everything else disappears when you're fully present in movement. Show me, Michael encouraged gently. Self-consciousness flashed briefly before Danielle set her food aside and rose fluidly. In her small living room, she demonstrated a simple combination. Graceful arms, controlled turns, muscle memory returning instantly despite years away from formal training. Michael watched with undisguised admiration, not just for her physical grace, but for this glimpse of her beyond spreadsheets and corporate strategy. When she finished, slightly breathless, he applauded softly. Beautiful, he said simply. The moment shifted something between them, a deepening beyond the physical attraction that had initially drawn them together and the professional respect that had followed. This was about seeing each other wholly, beyond roles and circumstances. Later, as evening deepened into night, their bodies found each other with a tenderness that transcended mere desire. Each touch carried meaning beyond pleasure, trust, partnership, recognition of the other's full humanity. In the darkness of her bedroom, away from corporate politics and financial conspiracies, they created something honest between them. Morning brought reality crashing back. News alerts about Callahan's stock fluctuations, messages from Morgan about board inquiries, the ongoing chess game they couldn't escape. The headline smiled. The article gutted. Her buried contract surfaced, and with it, the version of her she hoped he'd never meet. The Chicago Tribune business section headline hit like a physical blow. Callahan mentorship program under scrutiny. Leaked contract raises questions about merit versus favoritism. Danielle stared at her phone screen, nausea rising as she read further. The article detailed the specific terms of her mentorship agreement with Michael, including initial drafting dates that preceded her Westbrook assignment, contradicting their official timeline. They're getting desperate, Michael said, reading over her shoulder in her kitchen. He'd arrived minutes after she'd texted him the article link, concern overriding caution about being seen entering her apartment building. If you finally got power, would you fix the system that broke you? Or just save yourself and call it wisdom? Pick a side. The timing isn't coincidental, Danielle agreed, fighting to maintain composure. Friday is the maintenance window, our chance to access Foster's archives. This leak is meant to distract us, maybe even get my access revoked. Michael paced the small kitchen, tension evident in every movement. We need to accelerate our timeline. They clearly know we're investigating something. But we don't have enough evidence yet, Danielle reminded him. The SEC needs documentation proving board members authorized the Malaysian structures. Then we change tactics, Michael decided. Instead of hunting for evidence, we create a situation where they expose themselves. The strategy shift energized them both. Over the next 2 hours, they developed what Michael called a controlled explosion, a plan to force their opponents into revealing themselves through carefully orchestrated financial maneuvers. It's elegant, Danielle acknowledged, reviewing their strategy. We announce a potential restructuring of the Malaysian holdings as part of Westbrook integration planning. Nothing alarming, just standard post-acquisition efficiency measures, which forces anyone with hidden interests to react, Michael continued. They'll need to protect their arrangements, create new structures, move assets, all actions we can track in real time, and document as evidence, Danielle finished. Movement creates visibility. Their eyes met across her kitchen table, shared purpose creating intimacy deeper than physical connection. This partnership, equal minds working toward justice, had transformed whatever had begun in that locker room months ago into something neither had anticipated. The plan required careful staging. Michael would propose the restructuring at the executive committee meeting Thursday. Danielle and Morgan would position tracking systems to monitor reactions. Professor Winters from Northwestern would stand ready with SEC contacts if they captured actionable evidence. One complication, Michael noted. Foster will expect me to be distracted by the leaked contract story. I need to appear appropriately concerned about the public relations aspect. So appear concerned, Danielle shrugged. Call an emergency meeting with PR. Make public statements defending the mentorship program's integrity. While privately laying our trap, Michael nodded. Perfect misdirection. The ease of their collaboration still surprised them both sometimes. How naturally they anticipated each other's thoughts, complemented each other's approaches. Whatever had drawn them together initially had evolved into genuine partnership. Later that evening, as strategy gave way to quieter moments, they found themselves on Danielle's small balcony, the Chicago skyline glittering before them. Michael's arm wrapped around her shoulders against the autumn chill. What happens after? Danielle asked softly. If we succeed, if we expose the fraud, what then? The question contained multitudes. What happened to Callahan Enterprises? To Michael's leadership? To whatever existed between them, born in scandal but forged in shared purpose? Michael was silent for a long moment, considering futures neither had dared discuss openly. The company survives, he said finally. New board members replace those implicated. The Westbrook acquisition proceeds with proper oversight. And us? Danielle pressed gently. Michael turned to face her fully, hands framing her face with unexpected tenderness. That depends on what you want, Danielle. Not what circumstances allow, what you actually want. The distinction mattered. From their first encounter, external factors had shaped their relationship. Corporate hierarchy, scandal management, strategic alliance against corruption. Beneath it all, something genuine had grown, but neither had properly claimed it as choice rather than circumstance. I want something real, she admitted. Something that would exist even without conspiracies and corporate drama forcing us together. We are real, Michael said quietly. Whatever brought us into each other's lives. Wrong doors, Malaysian shell companies, leaked contracts. What's developed between us is genuine. At least for me. The vulnerability in his voice, though certainty replaced by human hesitation, moved her deeply. Danielle reached up, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. For me too, she whispered. But we haven't exactly had normal circumstances to test that. Then let's create some, Michael suggested. After this is resolved, however it ends, let's take time away. No Callahan Enterprises, no financial investigations. Just us discovering who we are together without crisis driving us. The promise of future normalcy sustained them through the tense days that followed. Their plan unfolded with precision. Michael's restructuring announcement sent subtle ripples through the executive ranks. Foster immediately scheduled unusual meetings with 3 board members. Morgan reported increased activity in the Malaysian financial portals. The trap was working. Someone was moving money, restructuring ownership, creating new patterns that highlighted the old ones. By Friday afternoon, they had captured enough unusual financial activity to justify Morgan requesting formal audit procedures. The executive committee approved the audit, including Foster, who couldn't object without raising suspicions. That evening, Danielle and Michael celebrated this small victory with quiet dinner at her apartment. The battle wasn't won, but their strategy was working. For the first time, they allowed themselves cautious optimism. To building bridges, Michael toasted, raising his glass to hers. Between facts and justice, Danielle added. And between us, Michael finished softly. As their glasses clinked, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. The screen displayed an emergency alert from Callahan Enterprises Security. The headline smiled. The article gutted. Her buried contract surfaced, and with it, the version of her she hoped he'd never meet. The security breach notification on Michael's phone transformed their quiet celebration into instant crisis. Unknown parties had accessed the company's personnel database, targeting specific employee files, including Danielle's complete history. They've escalated, Michael said grimly, already dialing Morgan's secure line. This goes beyond financial distraction tactics. Danielle felt exposed in ways financial documents never could accomplish. Her personnel file contained everything: background check results, credit history, references, educational verification. All the building blocks of the professional identity she'd constructed so carefully. Have you been called a gold digger, a liability, a mistake because you dare to be loved out loud? How did you keep your dignity when they wanted your shame? Tell us. What are they looking for? She wondered aloud, fear mixing with anger. My performance reviews? Salary information? Michael's expression darkened as Morgan shared details through the phone. They accessed your background verification section specifically, the educational and employment history portions. Cold certainty settled in Danielle's stomach. They're looking for inconsistencies, something to discredit me completely. The morning brought answers in the most public, painful way possible. The Chicago Business Journal's website featured a devastating headline: Callahan whistleblower's credentials questioned. Harris's application contained significant discrepancies according to sources. The article detailed allegations that Danielle had exaggerated her role at her previous employer, inflated her academic achievements, and misrepresented her financial analysis experience. Anonymous company sources questioned whether her Westbrook findings could be trusted given these supposed discrepancies. This is character assassination, Michael fumed, pacing her living room. They can't attack the financial evidence directly, so they're attacking your credibility instead. Danielle sat perfectly still, professional reputation crumbling around her. Everything she'd built through years of sacrifice and determination, undermined by strategic leaks and manipulated facts. The worst part, she said quietly, is that there's just enough truth mixed with the lies to make it believable. Michael stopped pacing, looking at her questioningly. I did work at Wilson Financial for 3 years, Danielle explained, voice steady despite her inner turmoil. But I was initially hired as administrative support, not as a financial analyst. I took on analysis projects unofficially, proved my capability, and was promoted. My application emphasized the analytical work without detailing the administrative beginning. Understanding dawned in Michael's expression, and they're framing that career progression as misrepresentation. Exactly, Danielle nodded. Technically accurate, but deliberately misleading. The same with my education. I did graduate with honors, but initially attended community college before transferring to Northwestern. My application doesn't hide that, but doesn't emphasize it either. The sophisticated nature of the attack revealed their opponent's desperation. They couldn't stop the financial investigation directly, so they aimed to destroy the investigators' credibility instead. This changes nothing about the evidence we've gathered, Michael insisted, sitting beside her, taking her hands in his. The Malaysian accounts still show the same patterns. The board members' connections remain documented. But it changes how that evidence will be perceived, Danielle countered realistically. If I'm discredited as unreliable, my financial analysis becomes questionable by association. They're neutralizing me as a witness. The personal and professional had collapsed into each other completely now. Her relationship with Michael had made her vulnerable. Her professional credentials were being weaponized against them both. Michael's phone rang. Hargrove, the board chairman, demanding immediate explanation. The corporate machine was already in motion, responding to the allegations with predictable bureaucracy. Emergency board meeting at noon, Michael reported after the brief, tense conversation. They want both of us there. Separately, the HR department has requested you meet with them at 10 to clarify application discrepancies. The trap was nearly complete. Once HR documented any technical discrepancies in her application, the board would have cause to terminate her and dismiss all her financial findings as the work of an unreliable employee. I won't go down without fighting, Danielle decided, steel entering her voice. They want to question my credentials? Fine. But that doesn't change the money trail we've uncovered. They spent the next hour preparing their counterattack. Morgan joined them, bringing critical financial documentation. Professor Winters arrived with preliminary SEC feedback on their evidence. What had begun as a romantic evening had transformed into war room strategy session. The HR meeting is a formality they'll use against you, Morgan advised. Answer truthfully, but minimize. Don't volunteer information. Don't sign anything without legal review. Danielle nodded, grateful for allies in this fight. In the board meeting, I'll handle the board, Michael said firmly. They can question your application all they want, but they can't explain away the financial evidence. That stands independently. As they finalized their approach, a moment of doubt crept into Danielle's resolve. What if this is too much, Michael? Your position, the company's reputation, all at risk because of how this started between us. Michael's response came without hesitation. This stopped being about us weeks ago. This is about integrity, the company's and our own. Whatever happens with the board today, we're doing the right thing. The reassurance steadied her, reminding Danielle why their connection had deepened beyond attraction into partnership. In Michael, she found someone who valued truth over convenience, principle over expediency. The HR meeting unfolded exactly as Morgan had predicted. Technical questions about application wording, implications of deliberate misrepresentation, forms documenting clarifications to her employment history. Danielle navigated it carefully, acknowledging career progression without accepting allegations of deception. I'll need to review any documentation with legal counsel before signing, she stated firmly when presented with amended personnel forms. The HR director's tight smile revealed frustration at this expected response. Of course. However, the board has requested resolution before today's meeting. Then the board will need to be patient, Danielle replied evenly. Due process matters, especially when careers are at stake. The professional confidence in her voice betrayed none of the turmoil beneath. Every credential questioned, every accomplishment reframed as exaggeration. It cut deeper than she'd anticipated. Foster didn't bother hiding his satisfaction, smirking openly as Hargrove continued listing the supposed discrepancies in Danielle's application. 3 allied board members nodded along, while others maintained careful neutrality, unwilling to defend her, but not yet committed to her destruction. Before this discussion proceeds further, Michael interrupted, voice commanding immediate attention. I'd like to address the timing of these allegations. Hargrove frowned at the interruption. The timing is irrelevant. Misrepresentation is. The timing is everything, Michael countered firmly. Ms. Harris identifies concerning patterns in Malaysian financial structures. Weeks later, her personnel file is mysteriously accessed and selective information leaked to undermine her credibility. This isn't coincidence. It's targeted retaliation. The accusation hung in the air, stunning several board members who hadn't connected these dots. Foster recovered quickly. That's speculation, Michael. The facts remain. She misrepresented her qualifications. Did she? Michael challenged, sliding folders to each board member. These documents tell a different story. Ms. Harris's complete employment history, verified independently by outside counsel. She began in administration at Wilson Financial and earned promotion to analyst based on performance. Hardly misrepresentation. Danielle watched the strategic counterattack with quiet admiration. Michael had anticipated this ambush and prepared accordingly. Furthermore, he continued, Ms. Harris's academic credentials have been re-verified. Community college followed by Northwestern University, graduating with honors exactly as stated in her application. Different path, same destination, and completely accurate in her employment documents. Several board members began reviewing the materials with increased interest, the narrative of deception already weakening. This still doesn't address the Malaysian findings, Foster insisted, shifting tactics. Even if her credentials are technically accurate, her limited experience makes these financial concerns suspect at best. Which brings us to the central issue, Michael agreed, surprising Foster with his apparent concession. The validity of the Malaysian financial analysis. Perhaps we should examine the evidence directly, rather than attacking the analyst? With practiced timing, Thomas Morgan entered the boardroom, carrying additional documentation. The surprise appearance of the respected VP of Finance shifted the atmosphere immediately. At Mr. Callahan's request, I've independently verified Ms. Harris's findings regarding the Malaysian subsidiaries, Morgan announced, distributing his own analysis. Not only did I confirm her concerns, I identified additional irregularities dating back 5 years. Foster's face flushed with barely contained anger. This is procedurally inappropriate. Financial reviews should go through proper channels. Through you, Michael interrupted pointedly. The same executive who attempted to block similar investigations into our Singapore operations 3 years ago. Perhaps you'd like to explain why. The direct accusation created immediate tension. Several board members glanced between Michael and Foster, sensing larger issues beneath this confrontation. These offshore structures serve legitimate tax purposes, Foster insisted. Defensive now. Standard industry practice. Quarterly ownership transfers concealing board member interests are not standard practice. Danielle spoke for the first time, voice steady despite the hostility directed her way. Nor are consulting payments to shell companies owned by relatives of senior executives. She opened her portfolio, removing specific transaction records Morgan had helped her obtain. 3 board members maintain hidden ownership interests in these Malaysian entities, she continued, refusing to be silenced. Each receives quarterly payments masked as vendor services. Total transfers exceed $50 million over 3 years. The boardroom erupted in overlapping voices, accusations, denials, demands for evidence. This is absurd, Foster shouted above the din. These allegations are documented. Michael finished firmly, and already shared with SEC Enforcement Division as of this morning. Silence crashed down on the room. The mention of regulatory involvement transformed theoretical corporate drama into potential criminal exposure. You went to the SEC without board approval? Hargrove asked, genuine shock in his voice. I fulfilled my fiduciary duty to shareholders and regulatory authorities, Michael corrected. The evidence suggested potential securities violations that, if left unreported, could create additional liability for the company. The legal framework shifted the power dynamic instantly. Board members began distancing themselves from Foster, sudden concern for personal liability overriding alliance. Perhaps we should discuss this privately with counsel present, suggested Eleanor Winters, the compliance officer who had earlier questioned Danielle's credibility. Excellent suggestion, Michael agreed. I've asked corporate counsel to join us momentarily. In the meantime, I suggest we address the immediate issue of Ms. Harris's status. All eyes turned to Danielle, who maintained perfect composure despite the emotional turbulence beneath. Ms. Harris identified financial irregularities others missed or chose to ignore, Michael continued. Her analysis has been independently verified by our VP of Finance. Any action against her would appear retaliatory and potentially create whistleblower protection issues. The legal implications weren't lost on the board members, who exchanged concerned glances. I move that we formally acknowledge Ms. Harris's contributions and affirm her continued employment during the regulatory review process, offered Thomas Chun, breaking ranks with Foster's allies. Seconded, added another board member, sensing which way the wind was blowing. Foster attempted one last attack. This doesn't address the inappropriate relationship between Mr. Callahan and Ms. Harris, which clearly influenced. My personal life is separate from my professional judgment, Michael interrupted firmly. But since you mention it, yes, Danielle and I have developed a relationship outside office hours. We've followed all company protocols regarding disclosure and reporting structure. Unless you're suggesting romantic relationships somehow compromise only female employees' professional capabilities, perhaps we should return to the actual financial irregularities. The pointed reference to double standards silenced Foster momentarily. The vote that followed was anticlimactic. 9-3 supporting Chen's motion, with Foster and 2 allies in opposition. Danielle's position was secured, at least temporarily, while the Malaysian financial structures would undergo formal external audit. As the meeting shifted to legal strategy for the upcoming SEC inquiry, Danielle caught Michael's eye across the table. A moment of silent communication passed between them, acknowledgement of battle won, but war continuing. 3 hours later, physically and emotionally drained, they found brief privacy in Michael's office. The corporate machine had shifted to damage control mode, lawyers preparing statements, PR crafting narratives, executives distancing themselves from the implicated board members. "You were magnificent," Michael said quietly, allowing himself to drop the CEO mask now that they were alone. "We both were," Danielle corrected, exhaustion evident in her voice. "But this is just beginning. The SEC investigation, the restructuring, the public fallout. It gets worse before it gets better." Michael moved closer, taking her hands in his. "The question is whether we face it together. Not as CEO and analyst, not as scandal-linked colleagues, but as partners. Real partners, whatever comes next." The underlying question hung between them. Were they a relationship of circumstance, forged in crisis and corporate drama, or something that would endure beyond these extraordinary circumstances? "I don't know what normal looks like for us," Danielle admitted softly. "We've never had it." "Then let's find out," Michael suggested. "After this settles, however it ends, let's discover who we are without crisis driving us together." The proposition held risk beyond corporate politics or financial scandals. The vulnerability of choosing someone deliberately rather than being thrown together by circumstance. "Are you proposing what I think you're proposing?" Danielle asked, heart racing for reasons unrelated to boardroom battles. Michael's smile carried certainty amid chaos. "Not yet, but I'm proposing the chance to get there. On purpose, not by accident or corporate conspiracy." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing not a ring, but a small key. "My lake house in Michigan. Away from Chicago, from Callahan Enterprises, from everything except us. One weekend to start figuring out who we are together when nobody's watching." The simplicity of the offer, time together without agenda or audience, moved her deeply. After months of performance and strategy, the prospect of genuine privacy felt like oxygen to drowning lungs. "Yes," Danielle decided, accepting the key and everything it represented. "But first, we finish what we started here. No running away until the truth is fully exposed." Michael nodded, understanding completely. "Partners in all things, then." She said yes, then swallowed. "There's something else." The next sentence could rewrite their forever. 6 months transformed landscapes, both corporate and personal. Winter had yielded to spring in Chicago, mirroring the changes at Callahan Enterprises, old corruption excised, new growth emerging from the wreckage. The SEC investigation had concluded with 3 board members facing charges, Foster accepting a plea deal in exchange for testimony, and Malaysian financial structures dismantled under regulatory supervision. Callahan stock, after initial turbulence, had stabilized at record highs, integrity proving profitable in unexpected ways. Michael stood at his office window, watching morning light transform the city he'd nearly lost. His position had survived the scandal, strengthened even, his decisive action against corruption earning rare corporate admiration. If someone saw your worth before you did, would you keep running and call it standards, or finally build something that outlives your fear? Choose run or build. The door opened without a knock. Only one person entered that way now. "The Wallace Foundation agreed to our terms," Danielle announced, entering with tablet in hand. "Full funding for the Southside Financial Literacy Program, renewable for 5 years." Michael turned, taking in the sight of her, confident, purposeful, no longer the junior accountant fighting for recognition. As newly appointed ethics and compliance director, Danielle had transformed her corner of the corporate world, creating safeguards against the corruption they'd exposed together. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "That's the 3rd community program this quarter. 4th if you count the scholarship fund," she corrected, setting down her tablet to join him at the window. Northwestern agreed to match our contribution for first-generation finance students. Professional achievements had multiplied in the aftermath of crisis, but the real transformation existed in spaces between work hours. Weekend mornings at his lake house, quiet dinners at her now larger apartment, a relationship built deliberately rather than thrust upon them by circumstance. The gala's tonight, Michael reminded her, hand finding hers naturally. Our first official company event as a boring, established couple, Danielle suggested with a smile. No scandal, no investigation, no corporate intrigue. Just the CEO and a compliance director who happened to share a home address. Disappointingly conventional, he agreed, returning her smile. The journey to normalcy had come with challenges. Rebuilding the company while building their relationship had required careful navigation, professional boundaries during work hours, learning each other's rhythms without crisis driving them together, discovering who they were beyond extraordinary circumstances. The doctor called, Danielle said softly, changing the subject with deliberate casualness. The test came back. Michael's attention sharpened instantly. And 12 weeks, she confirmed, unable to contain her smile any longer. Everything looks perfect. Joy transformed his expression as he pulled her close, hand resting gently against her still flat stomach. The pregnancy, unexpected but deeply welcomed, had arrived just as their lives settled into new patterns. Terrified, he asked softly against her hair. Completely, she admitted, but the good kind of terrified, like opening that door in the executive gym and finding you there. Best wrong turn I ever took, Michael murmured, still amazed at how one accidental moment had cascaded into their shared life. Outside his office, Callahan Enterprises continued its corporate rhythm. Meetings scheduled, decisions made, the machinery of business humming efficiently. Inside, they shared a moment of private acknowledgement, of battles won, corruption defeated, and something precious built from unlikely beginnings. Later that evening, they would attend the company gala, maintaining professional composure while carrying their secret joy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, pregnancy announcements, family planning, balancing impending parenthood with demanding careers. But in this quiet moment between corporate responsibilities, they simply held each other. Two people who had seen each other at their most vulnerable and chosen to build something lasting from that unexpected beginning. The life inside her was chosen, not bargained. If you felt that, prove it. Stay for what comes next.